you guys. It's me, Dr. Torie. My book is officially out. And yes, it is time to talk about ACEs. You guys can find the books everywhere. However, I would encourage you guys to go to my website, VicTORIEus.com, and place your order today. Yes, it's time to talk about ACEs. Let's go, y'all. Hello, 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 you guys. Welcome to another episode of Be Victorious. I had to tone it down just a little because this wonderful, inspiring young lady is here so we can finally connect. We have been supporting each other, I want to say, since we met. I want to say about 2 years ago on social media. I love her being a mom. I love how she expresses herself. I love that she's been a TEDx speaker. So knowing about ACEs isn't anything new to her. But what I love is how she takes care of herself. She's heavy on self-care. I just love her spirit, and it's a pleasure for her to be with me right now. You all know her on social media as Maverick Mommy. Her name is Jess. Jess, where are you?
Hey, Dr. Torie.
Glowing as ever. Oh, look at you. It's Jess.
It's
Oh
just the light.
my God. What do you want me to call you, Jess
Jess
here?
is good.
Okay, because we've had a relationship, you guys, for a very, very long time. I love to meet people on social media because some people use social media for what they are their experts in. You're a jack of all trades to me, and I admire you. I will always support you because I believe in you and believe in what you do. So
Mm.
tell our listeners who you are.
So I'm a youth speaker and an author. And I know that title gets tossed around a lot right now, a speaker, author type of thing. I really am. And I say that because my focus right now, the season in life, because you know how you're saying I'm a jack of all trades. There's pros and cons to that because I'm been constantly like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do. And right now, I'm just so dialed into the youth and speaking to them, helping them build that courage muscle, helping them build resilience. And my memoir was released in 2020, but my first children's book is being released May 2026. So, yes, I'm a speaker and an author, true speaker and an author. And I'm also a mother of four. Didn't think I would have a fourth child after 16 years after my last one, because my first three are 18, 20, 22, and then I have a 2.5-year-old.
Now that I did not know.
Yeah, so I'm doing it all over again.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, so my 20-year-old son, he's out back. He took the little one out to play while I'm doing this podcast. So teamwork.
Yes, makes the dream work.
Exactly.
Look at you, your glow. Oh my God, you are so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
No,
It's taken a lot of work. Like I'm sure we'll get into conversation. And that's the thing I find when people meet me and then they hear my story and the things I've been through, they go, I would never think you've been through all of that stuff. And I do take that as a compliment. And at the same time, it's been a lot of inner work to get to this point. And I'm still healing. As we know, healing isn't linear. And so I'm still on my journey. And I've had to pour a lot into myself so that I could also pour into my family and my community.
and that's why you're here. I admire you. You know I
Mm.
am. I'm humble enough to say that I'm a fan, and you know that because any opportunity I get, I'm supporting and saying, "Oh my God, the work that you are doing is so amazing." So
Thank
before
you.
we delve into your story, you know about ACEs. What
Yes.
made you have the discussion? What made you interested in ACEs?
So my interest in ACEs, and I don't even know when the first time I ever heard about the term,
Mhm.
where that was, when that was, but my interest in it came from my own experience, not so much in me growing up, because I could, I'm blessed in the way I could say I grew up in a great home.
Mhm.
And my experience being married, like getting involved in the life I did before the age of 17, like as a teenager, getting married at 18, having my kids, and having them go through their own ACEs, like their score is like they tick off every single box except for one.
Wow.
So that had me like, as a young parent, and then at one point in time, I was a single mom. It was so hard for me to, and I call this, parenting through the pain, right?
Mm.
And a lot of us can relate to that. It is so hard to be a parent while you're going through your own pain, right? And it's one thing to like, here's food on the table, I'm going to pay my electrical bill, but it takes so much more to have that emotional presence with your children and to guide them while you're going through pain.
Mm.
And so when I look at them, like I said, my first three, they're officially adults now, which is crazy. But I look back at their traumas and the ways it's affected them. And, I never want to say I regret anything in life. And I've seen the impact of those ACEs, growing up, and even now, and even the conversation I had with my oldest, a few months ago, and she was like, Mom, our life I don't know if you could swear on this podcast, but she was like, Mom, like our life was shit. And I was like, and it hurt to hear. And at the same time, it was like, that was the life that they came into.
Right. I applaud you and I want to hear more. But the fact that you had that open dialogue, how many parents right now are having open dialogue, not just with their children, but yeah, so your kids are adults now, but for them to openly express and say, this is what happens, you use that as an eye-opening experience to become the cycle breaker. Because
Yeah.
according to what we've talked about so far, you had a great life, but it was just the experience of who you were at that time
Yes.
to bring them through what they've experienced. And as a mother, it's innate for us. So we're
Yeah.
going to be aware and help them as much as we can. So I applaud you for that because growing up in my community, what you witnessed, you kept it quiet. You couldn't say anything because you wanted to keep it in the household and keep it within the family. So commends to you for that.
Thank
That's
you.
the thing. Absolutely.
Thank you.
So
Yeah. And the generational trauma, right? Like, even, and I'm not placing any blame on their father. It's, seeing their father, what he went through as a child, his own ACEs,
mm-hmm,
extreme child abuse,
mm-hmm,
as just one example, and how that affected the way he grew up and then passed on, to the children. Again, I'm not blaming. This is like, like we all have our own thing.
right.
And so it was like, okay, how can I not only make a difference with them now, even though they're older, but also with the youth coming up? Yeah, I got my young one, she's part of that generation, but also like the youth that are existing in the community. One of the great things about, I did a lot of like storytelling work, a lot of work with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals in Canada. And now being in New York City, I get to expand that work. And going into the next school year, I feel fortunate enough to partner with organizations and people where I can go and do this work in, some of the toughest areas in New York City, Brownsville, East New York,
Right.
where where ACEs scores are likely off the charts,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
there is an organization, and I want to connect you to Brittany. There is a organization, the Crow Hill Project, that is she's working with people. She's going into this. What I love is that she's going into the healthcare. She's talking to the physicians that don't know about ACEs.
Mm,
She's in that community. So I definitely would love to connect you guys.
please do.
Um, I've been offered a board position and I'm going to accept it just off of the strength of I see her doing work. I love people like us that are out there in the community doing what we need to do to educate people on ACEs. So I would definitely connect you with that.
Please do. And I think that's so important with the doctors. Like, I know for me personally, over the years when I would have my doctor visits and me having a like experience with sexual assault, when, I would be like, your annual exam, whatever, there's just like, I'm not ready to just be like, all right, like lay down on the thing, like spread your legs, like the whole
Mhm.
procedure. And it's like, wait. And they're like, no, 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 just relax your, I know maybe this too, I don't know.
No, this is us. Just let's go.
But you know how they're like, when you're getting like a pap smear or whatever, like your annual checkup screening. And then they're like, for me, they were always like, just relax your legs, just relax your legs. And they were like, they would say it to me like there's something wrong with me. And I didn't, it took me actually years to realize that's from the trauma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we don't have a lot of doctors that are trained in ACEs, right? So that is amazing work. The
Mm-hmm.
more that that could spread out there in the community,
Mm-hmm.
yes. So please do
And
connect me.
oh, absolutely. This is
Mhm.
why we're here. We need more of us because we are out here to find you and we connect because we've been connected for a while now. I think more of us need to share our stories. More of us need to get together and have these conversations and this dialogue so we can normalize the discussion because we've normalized the aces. We've normalized abuse. I hate it. It's all kind of abuse out there. The sexual abuse is never okay. Who said it was? But we normalized it because we don't want that to get outside of our households when it's happening and it's occurring. And then when we don't say anything, our people in our household become those sexual abusers or those physical abusers or those emotional abusers. So that's what it is for me. I tell people all the time, I'm grateful that I didn't have to experience that. My household lived in household dysfunction every day, all day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's why I key in on that. But I have people like you that understand that ACEs is really truly an issue and understanding is key.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, when you don't remember about the awareness, did you talk about your ACEs score? When did you originally take the ACEs quiz?
You know what? I want to say that my quiz was actually with you. Like that was actually the first quiz, which
Oh,
sounds
cool.
may sound crazy after like knowing about it for, a few years now, but I don't recall ever taking like a quiz on it.
Really? And
Yeah,
I hate to call it a quiz, but I know you know originally it was 50 plus questions in the original ACEs study. And this is what I do when I do presentations and I'm talking to people. So many people are attuned to this ACEs score that they don't want to talk about it. But what people don't realize is those 50 questions were compiled into the 10 questions. And
mm,
on my study, I break it down so people can understand and get some type of accuracy as far as the abuse. I've had people come to me and say, well, it said 5 years or older, but I wouldn't consider that because it was the babysitter. The babysitter is 5 years or older. That means this happened. You know what I mean? This wasn't okay because it was the babysitter.
yeah,
Abuse is abuse. And so
yeah.
I think for me, I made it more educational to where people are actually requesting it now. So thank the Lord for that. They're using
That's
it for their intake. Absolutely.
yeah, that's so good. So here's a question for you, right?
Yes.
So you hear about ACEs, some people go to age 17, some people go to like age 19. Okay, regardless. So here's my question for you. Because I actually wanted to send this to you on IG and I'm like, no, let me save this for the podcast and
Yes.
let me
Come
ask
on.
her.
Yes.
So we know that, okay, we think of ACEs like, okay, we think of the youth,
Yes.
clearly. Now, we also know that the brain doesn't fully develop, especially the prefrontal cortex, until you're about
Hmm.
25 years old, maybe in
Hmm.
26 years old. So, what happens to somebody who experiences trauma between the ages that are technically outside of the ACEs range? So, that like, say 20 to 26?
Because your brain is still developing.
Exactly.
And I think that's the reason why Dr. Torie and you, we want to address it to where when that 18 to 25, because if you notice, they're not doing that at all. They're not having that question for the 18 to 25-year-olds. And that's where we need to have that conversation.
Right.
So what Dr. Torie did is do that for my mentees. Like you all know about ACEs because I introduced the ACEs to you, but you are the ones that need to talk to the younger generation because they'll listen to you. You don't want to go through what we went through. So you address your ACEs now instead of having to go through the experiences we went through. And I
Yeah.
think that's the reason why mentorship is a big deal. Now I see it everywhere now. I'm like, oh my God, everybody wants to be mentors. And not to say it like it's a bad thing, because it's not. I mentor and have been mentoring forever. However, if you notice, the CDC has made this a resiliency tool now.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to say, to answer the question, mentorship. And I think that's where we need to get into those places where that 18 to 25 needs that. So I'm talking to professors. I'm trying to get into colleges. I'm doing that to where I can address those youth now. Because
Mm.
that's a generation right now. If you think about it, the 18 to 25 generation is a generation of COVID.
Yes. Yes. Because I know that was added, right? Pandemic was added to the list. And here's why I ask you that question, because even though my own ACEs score is technically like 1,
Mhm.
with the lifestyle that I got into, like I started getting involved with gangs. I think I was 15.
Mhm.
I left home at 17. So before the age of 18, I've experienced things like relationship violence, sexual assault. So, I mean, a whole host of things where I would still consider it trauma in my youth.
Mhm.
And now me being in my 40s is like, I have I mean, I could even look back at the last 10 years going, okay, why am I so tired?
Mhm.
Okay, like talk about the health effects, right? We know that ACEs is linked to health effects that show up later in life.
Yes.
I heard one doctor in another podcast. She was saying that I think they identified over 40 chronic diseases
Mhm.
connected to ACEs. Now that's a lot.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at myself for the last at least a decade going, why am I just so tired? I have this chronic fatigue. My doctor has no answers for it. And the only answer that could come was within going like, you've just been through so much. Your body, your spirit is just so exhausted from the trauma that you experienced, even years ago, that to this day it still shows up. And it's just
Mhm.
like, I got no answers from the doctors, but I feel like it's tied to the things that I went through before the age of 25.
It's unresolved trauma.
Even though my ACEs score is 1, I
Mhm.
still had that trauma I experienced as a youth that I
Mhm.
carry forward.
And that's the reason why the education for me is key, because even doctors can't answer that question yet. Because now, if you notice, they're starting to go back and more people are starting to do research and more people are starting to have conversations. This came out in 1995, showcased in 1998, and set on the CDC's website since then. All of this new information is because more and more people, healthcare and mental health is at an all-time high right now. They had to put the pandemic on there as ACEs because it affected us bad. We were living in households with the people that were abusing us, neglecting us. Household dysfunction skyrocketed. But if you also notice, they've changed it now to where it's not even household, it's community now. So now community violence,
Right.
mass shootings, racism. It's like, come on, you guys. I think that's what bothers me with people talking about the ACEs score, because if you, if you haven't experienced racism,
Right.
don't think that you're better than somebody else because your ACEs score is this. We all have ACEs. So, like you
Mhm.
said, your one, that one had a huge effect on you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And
Unfortunate, but that's the motivation and push that we need to share with other people so it won't affect us. Because I'm telling you, I know you witnessed my kind of shut down for a minute in March, April.
yeah.
I was really going through, and I wasn't going to say anything until I talked to my therapist, and she was like, "I think you need to say something so people can know that it can happen to anybody. Blackouts and seizures." Yes.
Mm. And that's just testament to like you don't remember, but I was saying at the beginning, right, where it's like healing isn't linear. Like you don't know. And sometimes you do the work, you could, whether that's therapy, like sitting down with a therapist, like whether that's people do plant medicine, some people, whatever it is for the person, and then you think like, I'm good,
Mhm.
right? And then 2 years later, you're like, oh, oh, still got
Back.
triggered by this, or this health condition, something. You just,
Mhm.
and this could go on for life. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it does.
Right.
But what I love about the ACEs is that, we always talk about how that your ACEs score doesn't define you, right?
Right.
Which is so true. And I love that ACEs give somebody a like, I'm not abnormal. There's nothing wrong with me. It gives me some kind of context to why I may behave the way I do, why I may think the way I do, but there's nothing wrong with me.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest things I want to share with the youth is like, because so much of like, do I fit in? Do I matter? How do I look to other people? It's such a big thing in their world that like, yeah, you're going through this stuff and you can't change the past, but you could do things now to pour into yourself to like I'm big on in my storytelling course, I always talk about the gift and the pain, right? So how can you use that the pain that you went through to highlight yourself? We talk about the pressure that coal goes under to turn into diamonds. How can this pain turn you into a diamond? Okay. How can this other pain turn you into a diamond? And of course that's hard to see at the time, and this could be controversial because I know that some people could say like, you know, maybe there is no reason for the pain. I am a believer that pain is always there in some capacity to
Mhm.
help us grow, even if it's just a smidge, even
You're
if it's
right.
just a little bit,
I agree.
to keep
I,
expanding, right? And in I don't know if you're familiar with Kabbalah, but in Kabbalah they talk about how every person in your life is an actor in your movie, is an
mm,
actor in your movie. And
okay.
so when you look at someone, you're like, dang, like, why is that person like this annoying person? Why are they showing up in my life? Why is this person here that keeps hurting me? Like, I don't know what's going on with the situation, but every person has a purpose in your life. Why is that actor in your movie? And it's your job to figure that out so that you can grow out of that scene, right? And then you get to be the director and say, all right, this is how things are going to go in my movie, and I can let that person affect me or not affect me. I can do something about my situation, and then I can create a new scene and then
Right.
keep building from there.
Right. That's why we need you. That's why we need you, because those examples are so relatable to people because it's relatable. Create
Mm,
that scene. I've never heard of it before, but um, you're my boo thing and my best friend at this point because we have a lot to talk about. So I'll make sure I get that information and look it up because, of course, I love research and
yeah,
I want to learn more. This is
yeah,
this is the educational aspect of it for me. I think that's the reason why I love it so much because you can always go and look it up yourself.
yeah,
And that's the reason why I encourage people to go to the CDC. There's resources out there and people are talking about it. But if you want to go to the source, go to the CDC.com.
yeah.
Quick to give us information about when we went through the pandemic, when we went through COVID-19 or any other um, situation, they're quick to tell us about that. You guys put in ACEs on the CDC website and a wealth of information comes out. So
Mm,
I'll definitely look that up. I think that's a
okay.
great tool or resource for people to use.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I wrote it down too. So tell us more. I know that you're working with youth, and I thank you again so much. Tell us what you do for yourself in regards to not just your children, but for yourself and your own self-care.
So this has actually been probably the biggest year I've poured into myself, right? We talk about self-care over the years. I do this, I do that. I go to, get massages here and there. And I find like this is the perfect year to talk about self-care because as a mother and as a spouse, I told you I married young.
Mhm.
I feel like I've been just pouring into other people. And of course, we naturally do this as
Empaths.
mothers, like, yeah, we as empaths as well, that we pour into other people. And so it was like, just it's time to just be selfish. Like, and that's not a bad thing. Like I can't be that much better of a mother and a mentor to my family, to the community, if I can't pour into myself first. And this year it's been everything from mentorship, like I've invested in high level mentorship, to I'm big on holistic, like I have another IG page, it's a Clean Beauty Mommy. And I started it because I'm really big on healthy eating, non-toxic living. So I'm really mindful of the things that go into my body, the things I eat, the things I put on, shampoos, cosmetics. Because here's the thing, is like, look, if I look back at the trauma, that the experiences that I've been through in the past, right? Okay, I can't change that. And can that link me to certain diseases now or later on? Yes, it could. Okay.
Right.
What I can do though is I can put that power back in my hands and I can mitigate some of that toxic stress by eating healthy, by exercising, by getting massages, by surrounding myself with certain friends, by elevating my business, by elevating my wealth consciousness, by, passing this wisdom on to my children, by creating through books. Um, so it's a whole host of things. And so at least I have control over that. Like in Canada's almost as bad as America as far as like how bad food like ingredients are. And when I came to America, I was like, dang it, like it's bad. Like it's
They're on
bad.
every corner. They're everywhere. And I have taught my kids, I'm sorry. I have a 17, 15, and 11-year-old. You will make your own food because what I will not do is spend money on something that's processed anyway.
Yeah.
Something as small as that, people just don't understand and realize how much they're saving their own lives by taking care of themselves.
Yeah. I try to tell my son that, and he's a big gamer, right? And sometimes his gamer friends send him food to the house. And I'm like, oh, KFC, like I just cringe inside. Chipotle, Popeyes. I'm like, no. Like of course we have some limit. I'm not saying like be like totally restrictive and like of course like even for me like okay, now my sort of cheat meal, it might not be like the typical like let's go out and get fried chicken type of thing.
Right.
Um but yeah, okay, enjoy here and there, but when I see them, when especially my son, when I see him getting that food, I just cringe.
I do too. And wait, let me tell you, Chipotle. Love it, right? I promise you, I do at least a Chipotle night once a month in my house. I will go and get everything that they have in the store and make it myself just because I want them to know that they do not have to go to the store to get it. Swear to God.
Right.
Because it's so convenient. It's at the store, but it's still processed. And it's like,
Process.
yeah, so what? They're bragging and they're cutting up the chicken and they're making it in front of us. But
Yeah. Yeah, and see, those are the things that we can control, right?
mhm.
Like I was saying, at least I can mitigate some of that toxic stress. Okay, went through what I went through, but at least this is what I have. And see, and we didn't get into my story from before. One of
Oh,
the
we
things,
are. This is us, Jess. I love us. So we will trust.
and so one of the things when I was involved in relationship violence, domestic violence situation, everything that he did that was like take away, I used to write out my thoughts in a book, right? I would write poems.
Mhm.
I would write in my journal. He found it one day, he ripped it up and he threw it at me, right? So I said, no more of that. Um, oh my gosh, like he tried again, we'll get into the story, but the
Yes.
the abuse that I went through, I was like, all right, one thing that he cannot take away. See, when I was younger, and I tell the youth this in one of my talks, I say, my mom always used to say, wherever you go, no one can take your education from you, which
Right.
is true. And for me, when I was with him, I would say in my head, no matter what he does, or anyone else, they cannot take my health away from me. And
Right.
so when I got pregnant at 19, I said, I'm going to invest. I went to the gym. I started learning about health, got into yoga at 19, and I never stopped since. So this has been over 20 years in the making.
Mhm.
But over this time is like, how can I keep finding ways to nourish, talk about self-love, to nourish myself, to keep on pouring? Because sometimes, again, like that trauma wants to creep up
Mhm.
and you're like, all right, we got to like wash it over with like more of this love from ourselves. And then it's going to keep coming up again. And then you keep washing it. And I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things. Otherwise, like if you don't love on yourself, who's going to do it?
That's that
Truly.
That's you talking to your inner self. And I think also, and let me share, a lot of us aren't connected to our inner self.
Mm.
And I think that has a lot to do with understanding that unresolved trauma that we don't talk about.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this. What I love about your story is the aftermath, I'll be honest, because you set a positive example, not just for yourself, but for your children. But what people don't know and understand and realize that you were 18 when you had your first child. So now we can delve into that story because a lot of people aren't with those relationships when you're younger. I'm not even with the people that was with when I was a teenager, and yet you had children. So tell me more. Like, how did that start? How did it begin?
Well, it's funny because again, when I go up and tell my talks, you look at me and you're like, what has she been through? Type of thing, right? And yeah, I had a great childhood. And but one of the things for me growing up was, do I matter? I have memories of being in kindergarten, and I remember we went on a field trip and I was left in the kitchen, and and I was in tears bawling like I'm left here alone. The teacher left me, all my fellow students are gone. And then same with, like, we talk about children being chosen last on the sports team.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, that was me. I remember then in eighth grade, my public speaking teacher, funny, I'm a speaker now, but my public speaking teacher, I would be crying. And she told the kids, there was this young boy, John, he was like, it's okay, it's gonna be okay. He's like my cheerleader. It was so cute. I wish I could thank him if I could find him today. But she embarrassed me. I felt so embarrassed in front of the whole class because she got so mad. She got in front of the class and she said, if she doesn't learn this now, she's never going to learn it in life. And I was just like in tears and like went up there just like sobbing. And that traumatized me. And it just felt like I never fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always struggling to matter somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I won't go into the finer details, but when I was 15, that's when I started meeting people who were in gangs, so gang members. They were in house arrest, and then I started, hanging around the whole crew, and so that just got deeper and deeper. And then at 16, oh yeah, then 15, the first time I had alcohol, first time I got into drugs. 16, I was gang raped by 13 guys. 17, I married a gang leader. Met a gang leader.
Mm-hmm.
And then we both got arrested. He went to jail.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed with him. And then 18, I got married to him in prison. And then 19, I got pregnant. Yeah, so it's been, I'm giving you like the nutshell short highlights, cliff notes
Look, my
version.
mouth did drop 4 times.
And so, there's a lot of stuff that happened in that time. I'm giving you quite like an overview. And then it was not until almost 10 years into our marriage where he actually tried to kill me. So that was when our 3 kids were upstairs sleeping, and he beat me. He stabbed me in the head and hand. He strangled me, and I'm still standing. I'm still
Baby,
standing. I'm still
yes, you
here.
are. Yes,
I'm
you
still
are.
here. And that was it was a very, very, very tough time. That whole time, not just the time, like I call it like the night that he attacked me, but the whole time since, 15, there's a lot of trauma that I experienced. And so it's given me a lot of time to keep pushing myself, like to like I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. Now, was it easy? I don't know. Right? Like I tried to kill myself when I was a teen, landed in the hospital. Um I was cutting myself as well. I would bang my head into the walls, and I would always say like, I'm so stupid, I will never matter. I say no, like whatever I say doesn't matter. And that would be reinforced by the abuse, where he would laugh at me if I, said that this was abusive. And if I tried to speak up, he would always try to cut me down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was always trying to find ways to keep. And you know what, Dr. Torie, I swear to this day, I say, I think why God has blessed me with 4 children is because they are my number one purpose. for
Mhm.
continuing to live. Because even in my adult years, I'm gonna be honest, like I've struggled with like I don't even like what's the point? Like I will get so overwhelmed sometimes. And then I remember my kids. I'm like, no, I can't do this
They're
to
so
them. Like I
motivating.
have to keep. And so I always say, like, God bless me with four because I don't know. Like, because even getting pregnant at 19, that was a crux for me. Like that was I was at a cross points of like, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with my life. Like I was with someone who was in jail, been through all this abuse. And then she came along, like I got pregnant, and then they say babies don't make you closer or fix things. And for me, that happened the opposite. It actually brought us together where we're like, okay, like let's actually stay together and try to make this work. And we did, and we had three kids together, even though there was abuse. Now, I stayed because there was a lot of fear, and I tried to leave. I even sought help from the police at one point, which in that life, I felt like I was doing the worst thing possible. Like you never go to the police.
Right.
And I felt like this is the thing I have to do. And I walked up the steps with my daughter, she was like 2 at the time, and then I had my son who was still in his baby carrier.
Mhm.
Literally walked up the steps to the police station. I told the female officer what happened. I said, my husband said he's going to try to kill me, right? This is years before he actually tried to kill me. He said he
Right.
was going to kill me. And believe it or not, she said, do you have any family in the city? And I said, yeah, I have an uncle. I was lying. I had more family, but I said, yeah, I have an uncle. She slid me the phone at the time, right? Back when there's like rotary phones. She slid
Mhm.
me the phone. She goes, if you don't call your uncle right now and tell him what happened so that he can come pick you up or whatever, I'm gonna have your children taken away from you. And at that moment, I was like, I cried. Dr. Torie, I'm telling you, I was like, am I hearing this right? Number one, from a police officer. Number two, from a female police officer. I said, if the police can't help me, no one can help me. That's what I said in my mind. And we know that women, now, of course, men get abused too. We know that women who go back to the people that abuse them, they have a higher chance of actually being killed.
Right.
So I was like, and I knew that. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going back. Right. What am I gonna tell him? Like, I tried to leave you. I went to no, I just said I had to go to my uncle's for a little bit for a break.
Mhm.
And but I couldn't believe it at that time, right? And so, that was just adding fuel to the fire and like, am I ever gonna get out of this? And eh, and I think that's why that drive for me is there to
It
talk to
is.
the youth about courage and resilience because you go through the youth like they're going through such tough times and it's so easy to become jaded and like I'm not going to try again. I was like, what's the point? I know how this is going to end up. But there's so much reward in putting yourself in the fire again. If that's what it means, jumping into the fire again, jumping into the unknown, there's so much more possibility of reward than you sitting back in life going like, I give up.
Right.
Like I'm just going to stay small. I'm just going to stay on the sidelines because I've been hurt,
Right.
because this stuff happened to me, because XYZ. It's easier to do that. And trust me, most people I know will have no problem staying in the comfort zone on the sidelines. But I'm telling
Sure.
you, life is so much more rewarding if you take that risk, even if
Mhm.
that means being burnt again, because you're going to be able to stand up and rise once again
Mhm.
and have that faith and just and go. Like life will keep rewarding you. That's why if you look back at my friends, they go, Jess, now you're living in New York. Now where are you living? Now you're doing this. And you uprooted your family from a whole country. It's like I just keep, I don't know. I can't really explain it. I think it's just like
Yes, you do.
you
You know it.
you just keep going. And really it's like the faith in God, like a
Mhm.
higher power that God has my back.
You
I'm
know
gonna
it.
jump. Yeah, like the fire might burn me. I might get scalded. I might be left with scars, but I'm still standing. It's okay. Like
And
it's
he's
o-
not
it's
going
okay.
to give you more than you can bear.
No. Even though it's so much in the moment, like, we go through hard times and you feel suffocated, you feel like you can't get up. There's always another there's always light at the end of the tunnel, as they say, always.
And that's why you're here. You're a witness. I cannot, I wouldn't have ever. And that's the reason why this is a safe platform for people to share their story. Jess, I had no clue whatsoever because I see you glow. I always compliment you all the time.
Yeah.
But my God. And what's funny is if you take off color, if you take off gender, if you take off all of that, your story is like everybody else's story. The problem is, like you said, you tried. Maybe that's a reason why people are not saying anything, but you are there. You are the witness. You are the person. From now on, I'm going to say, if she can do this, so can you, because
Mm.
your whole life has made a dramatic turn for the better because of the experiences you went through. What I love is that you started talking about your experiences in the kindergarten, and
Yeah.
people understand and realize that's ACEs. You remembering that is ACEs. That
Mm.
was a traumatic event that has had an impact on you for all of your life. And people have to understand that it is not about an ACEs score. It's about understanding how much that experience affected you. So now you don't want to be left alone.
Right. And sometimes, and you know how we talked about, like I mentioned about the gift and the pain, right? You look
Mhm.
back at that experience in kindergarten, which was way back then, and then you look at something in grade 8 where speaking teacher was embarrassing me. I felt embarrassed in front of the whole class. But now I look back as a public speaker, which I never thought I would be, never thought I would be, and go, oh, I see the pattern and I see how my life lined up those experiences
Yep.
so that I could flip that. I say, flip the script. So I could flip the script, and now I could use speaking as a platform to share this kind of information with other people.
And congratulations, you guys. You are listening to a great example of how Jess is using her adverse childhood experiences for the better, because that's what I've been encouraging people to do, to share your story. And when you're sharing your story, incorporate ACEs into that story. And you just gave a good example, not to say it in a resourceful way, but to say it in a resourceful way, because that was a great example.
Mm.
This is what people are doing. This is the reason why people are reaching out to me saying, hey, give me a little bit more information on ACEs to help me say my story even more, because that's
Mm.
what's happening. And I think
Yeah.
that's the reason why people are engaging a lot more or saying it a lot more, because it is what it is. We're so into the word trauma that people really don't know what it is for real. They don't.
Yeah.
It's just a buzzword, or people are trending to make it, cool. It's not okay to go through trauma at all. It's an experience that we don't want to go through. And you just gave a great example. I hate to hear that you went through that, but I'm happy that you're out on the positive side doing something for you. And you are a role model, not just for kids, but for your own children.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's the biggest thing. And it took me years to realize it's actually my children first that I'm here to make a difference for. Because,
Mhm.
and why I say that, when I would do work inside of the prisons in Canada, one of my mentors that would come in with me, he would say, he said something to the effect, because here I am, and I would only work with male inmates, right, at the time, people who've been, guys who've been incarcerated. And so I take that back because I don't like to put the word inmate on
Mhm.
there. Um, so the guys that were incarcerated, I'd be sitting in front of them, and my mentor, he would look at me and he was like, he said to me in private, he's like, I think you should really be focusing on your children.
Mhm.
And he said something that to effect, and I was just like, yeah, okay. Like I took it with a grain of salt. Like, no, I really want to be doing this work. And I didn't understand till years later, like it is my children. Um, like, like they've been through so much. And just
Mhm.
because they're adults now doesn't mean I can't keep pouring into them. Like it's never too late you know, and whether that's even having conversations so that they have a platform. Like, I love that you have this podcast because, like you said, you know, whether it's my story, other people's stories, we all have our different experiences. But by sharing these stories, people who are listening can see I'm not abnormal, I'm not unusual. Oh, other people are going through hard times too. Because we don't talk about this stuff. We're out there, social media, meeting people. You don't see this. You don't see what's behind here.
Not at all.
You
And
don't.
I'm happy that with the ACEs initiative that my mentees have stepped up because I've shared with them how much their mentorship is impacting their classroom. So it's like,
Mm,
oh, I am doing this. Yeah, you
mm.
guys. I just got to make it make sense. You know what I mean? To them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to see more and more are stepping up to the plate, that's how I see it. To say, I'll tell you what happened. Marcel sent me a message and he passed the LBS one. The LBS one is the special education license test, and he passed it. And he said, I'll tell you, he said, ACEs is everywhere. He said, I can answer those questions as good as someone else because that special education information is ACEs. And I've been saying that for a minute, but nonetheless, to hear him say it and he's in a younger generation was humbling. So now all of a sudden I get all these people like, oh, okay, well, if Marcel can do it, so can I. So let's do it. Let's have these conversations. Let's talk about the things that we're not talking about, not just in the classrooms. You also said that the police turned you away. And I'm ready to get and dive into those because those are the people that we need to talk to. I also want to connect you with the Compassion Prison Project. She's doing
Okay.
she's going into the prisons, and the prisoners are the ones that are talking about ISIS and having the conversation. So I'm going to give you a lot of resources to help. Honored to do this for you because again we've been talking about it for a while, but to connect you to people that are already doing the work in the community is what we need because you're so powerful and you've been doing so much. But I think that collaboration is what's going to help us build because we need each other. Your story, oh my God, is so familiar. And
Mm,
you know, my book is the introduction. I want people to talk about it because to this day, I'm still not as comfortable as people think with sharing my story. So
mm.
you've motivated me a little bit because that's the second part of my book that is not out yet. I needed people to understand ACEs before I can share my story. And
Okay.
so you sharing your story is very familiar. I too relocated because I had to get away from them. Had to,
Mm,
had
mm.
to. I'm building in my children. My children are the ACEs ambassadors. It's my mentees, but then to hear my children like, I just did my bio. Can you help me? I'm like, you want to be an ACEs ambassador too? I help people. I talk to people, but we're cycle breakers, Jess. This is what cycle breaking looks like because we're leading by example.
Yeah.
And I think I hid for so long some of the things that he did so my children couldn't see it to where now that they older and they see it, it's like, okay, now we have to step up. Now we have to understand why ACEs is so important and why we have to have these conversations. And I think that's what ignited them to have the conversations in the classrooms with their friends. So here
Mm.
we are.
Yeah. And I love that. And you know, Dr. Tor, I'm telling you, like, hearing your lives, especially lately, has re-inspired me like to a new level. And I'm not even kidding, to the point where my high school talk that I deliver, I was like, all right, let me make another iteration of this. How can I now actually integrate some ACEs awareness in this? How can I not only, yes, I speak about my story and give them resilience tools, but how can I actually talk about,
Mhm.
bring the term to light and talk about it so that they can recognize,
Mhm.
you know, what it is. They could even see it in their peers where it's like, oh, this is someone who's going through XYZ.
Yep.
They could use help, well, you know, whatever it is. It can inspire teachers.
Mhm.
I know that one of the groups of students I'm working with this coming school year, this one particular group has a parent that's been incarcerated, right? And we know that's one of the ACEs. Just like my book that's going to be coming out is about a young girl, Jazzy, who her father is incarcerated. So they must find courage through both of their days while he's away. And it's called the 800th moon because he's been away for 800 moons now.
Let me also share with you on Hulu, Kerry Washington has always been an advocate for ACEs.
Mm,
She's huge and she talks about it. She talked about it in her own memoir. There is a show called Unprisoned. It's with
yes.
Delroy Lindo, Kerry Washington, and she's talking to her inner child. And of course, I know you know me, I reached out. I need you all to know that you all are talking about adverse childhood experiences. And their second season opens up with them talking about it to a T. I'm not saying I did it. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the awareness is out there and that her story is familiar. It's actually the author Terry McMillan telling her story, and Hulu and Unprisoned and Kerry Washington and Delroy Lindo, and then her inner child, who I love to a T, are telling their ACEs story. So again, we heard there are resources and
Yeah.
there. We just have to make it relatable for people. So again, to you, I commend you because really incorporating that ACEs in your platform and in your story is going to help so many people.
Thank you. And I have to check out that series because I heard about it. So I know one of the guys that was involved with a project, Lewis Reed, and he's formerly incarcerated. He's in this area here, the tri-state area.
Mhm.
And I was like, when I saw him post about it, I was like, oh, I got to check that out for sure. And I forgot that Kerry Washington was a part of that.
Mhm. She doesn't hide what I love is that she doesn't hide her aces. I'm aiming now that the podcast is starting to, get some, we're back, of course, and then
Mhm.
I'm looking for those type of people like you that not only know about aces but are using their experiences to get out there and talk more and advocate more for other people. So
Mm.
I got some things up my sleeve because we're going to start seeing some valuable people. You're valuable to me. We need people like you that are on here that can tell their story and talk about how much of an impact they're making in the community to support you, because I'm telling you, your story is so valuable. Just even having this conversation with you, I think we could talk all day. Let's be
Yeah.
clear. I mean,
I-
it's been us, but just to have you in the community, I want to introduce you. You see the community. You see on Thursdays when we do our lives, they pop up, they talk,
oh,
they
yeah.
have conversations. The mentees is who trip me out because they be like, Miss Williams, I'm gonna get into therapy, blah 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 blah. But I think the more and more we have that discussion, and the more and more we normalize it for them, then they'll do that too. So I want to see us do more work together. I want to see us collaborate a lot more. And I definitely am going to introduce you. I've already done it. But once they see this podcast, they're going to know exactly who you are because they're going to put your names together and know I always talk about you all the time because you're so valuable. So
Mhm.
just want you to know I did not even know half of this stuff that you talked about right now, but to know that you carried that armor all of these years, I think it's motivating. And I'll tell you, my God, the honest truth for me, I think I needed to hear this story because we have a similar story. And I'm telling people, I'm not starting over again. I'm tired of this. I'm not doing this every time I pour my heart out. And here you are. You have poured your heart out and you have found love again and have a 2-year-old.
Yeah, doing this all again in my 40s. It's
I
very
love it
different than in my
so.
20s. But Dr. Torie, I soak up all of your words and I so appreciate that. And I'm down for all of that you were saying, definitely down for a collab. And there's something I want to add before we wrap up.
Yes.
When I do the work in the community with the youth, my big thing is also because here's the thing with resilience, right? We always talk about resilience as bouncing back, right? And there's post-traumatic growth. I think that's what they call it, right? So you can not only bounce back, but go further. And I'm a big advocate of like, sometimes people go through hard times and they're like, all right, I got through something tough, right? Dust on my shoulder, onto the next. And that's great. My big thing with especially the youth is, so you mentioned the word compassion, right? So forgiveness and compassion, yourself
Mhm.
and others. That
Right.
includes yourself and your other and others. Because you can walk away from a situation and be like, yeah, I'm good, whatever, and only make it about yourself, which
Right.
again, it's fine, it's for survival, cool. I'm here to elevate not only the minds of the youth, but the hearts. How can
Right.
you walk away with even more love in your heart despite what you've been through?
Right.
So the experience with my ex, he tried to kill me.
Mhm.
And this is what my TEDx talk was largely about, was is called Dear Husband, Thank You for Trying to Kill Me, which is a strong title. And you go,
Mhm.
what? And some people go, how could you forgive someone that tried to kill you? Well, I didn't do it to get back with him. Not at all. It was for me. It was so
Right.
that I could free me. And, it did something for him, and he passed away already. But I found so much freedom in that. And I believe that that experience, the whole experience with him, helped lead me to the work that I'm doing today. Like, I would not be doing this work if it wasn't for my involvement with him. And so it's like, how can you walk away with a stronger mind and stronger heart? How can you lead with love? That's the big thing. How can you lead with love? We don't, the world, there's some crazy things going on in the world right now, wild times.
Yes, it is.
And the next generation is like, we don't need any more leaders that are leading from a place of envy and jealousy and greed and hate. We have way too much of that. There's way too much division. And I hate to say this in 2024, that there's this high of a level of that. We
Mm.
need we need leaders that are leading from a place of love.
Yep.
And that is going to start with the youth. So how can we get them, again, not to just like, all right, dust off your shoulder, keep going,
Mhm.
but how can you leave that situation better for yourself and for others?
And that's why I love you. You stuck with me, Jess. I know you know that. Oh my God, you are so amazing because it's the truth. And we need you to continue to set that example. People are going to listen to you. Now, again, I will confess, I didn't know all of this. I know what we say, the people have different chapters in their book of life. I met you in this chapter where you're glowing and you're doing TED Talks and you're sharing your story. But for those who don't know, now you know. You are the example. You are a resilience tool. You are a cycle breaker. You are what people need to see so they can understand and know they can overcome too. That's what they need to see. They need to hear that. She didn't have no kid when she was 15. She didn't have no kid when she was 17. She was married when she was 19. Who gets married at 19? Like stuff like that is the conversations we need to have so people can know and understand. There are people that get married at 17 and 19 and live a wonderful life. So let's be clear. I'm not saying that that was a bad thing or good thing. What I'm saying is awareness of all kinds are key.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Yeah, I look forward to our work together and helping, expand this work, as much as possible.
I need you bad because your story, OMG. Watch. And that's all I'm going to say because, especially in the communities where we're targeting poverty or we're targeting homelessness or how many people are actually homeless because they can't go home. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And not to, you know, the police. I want to get into I want to get into them bad, you know what I mean? Especially with the awareness of that ACEs tool, because those new officers are going to be arresting people and have no clue why they're arresting them. At least you can have that consideration, or that police officer, when you went to the police station, if they knew about ACEs just a little bit, to have that consideration instead of saying, call your uncle here, let me take you in, let me keep you here. Not, oh, well, if you don't do this, I'm gonna call the police on your kids. because that's exactly what she's going to be doing. You're taking this mother away from her children, the ones that are actually the mother is trying to help them get away from the situation. But now look at what we're doing. Look at what's going on now. And that's what I want to do. That's why it's important for you to continue to, address the youth and do what you do. So, oh, absolutely. 110% you're going to be hearing from me. I'm talking about personal number and everything, because we need to have these conversations. And now that I know it's not me anymore, because once upon a time, I was just like you to think, okay, I was in this alone. We have to build this community so we know we're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And now is
I
the
think,
time.
yep, this is the time. And honestly, let me say this on some empowerment. I think it's time for us as women, because I'm excited about 2024, not just with what's going on in the United States. I have gained so much empowerment by watching the Olympics. Women are doing their thing. It's just humbling to see that we're taking a step for the positive. Even just being women back in the day, we couldn't even get recognition. And now that we're taking over and doing what we need to do, I think it's time for change. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm so ready. I am so ready. Let's do this.
So let's let everybody know, because I know you did talk about another Instagram page. I want that information too. Tell our listeners where they can find you.
So here I struggle with like the social media thing just because of my lack of time with the little one. But IG Maverick at Maverick Mommy,
Mhm.
and the mommy is MAMI, so Maverick Mommy. And then my Clean Beauty page, which I just started recently, is Clean Beauty Mommy. So again, MAMI, Clean
Okay.
Beauty Mommy.
Are you anywhere else? Like, are you on Facebook? Are you
I
on
have a website for my speaking for the school. So that's jessforyouth.com. So JESS 4 FOR and then youth.
okay.
Justforyouth.com. Yeah, and then I'll have more when my book, like closer to when my book is coming out. Right now, this 2024-25 school year is like I'm really dialed into getting into more schools. I soon want to spread that across the nation. I want to go into other schools, not just in New York City.
And
And
I want to help. I definitely want to help. I do.
yeah, please, yeah, I would love to collab on that and doing the work in the community. Like I said, the group that has, they have parents who've been incarcerated, the community, East New York, Brownsville, a lot of gun violence, partner with an organization. We have our own nonprofit that started up as well.
Mhm.
So, so we're in the trenches, like as far as like hands-on in that stuff for this year. And then I just want to keep expanding from there.
And we will do that. I'm humbled to be a part of the collaboration and a part of the team. I think the
Thank you.
community knows me, Dr. VicTORIEus everywhere. If it's not Dr. VicTORIEus, it's Be Victorious. If you're really looking for me, it's bevictorious.com. And I will let you guys know you will be hearing from me and Jess again, because I definitely want to be there and support when she gets this book out. We're fellow authors, been fellow authors. These books are resources and tools for us to get out to help and share our wealth of information to you guys. So we thank you guys for being here again for another episode of Be Victorious. But I could tell you, you'll see us again. Thank you guys again. We'll talk to you soon. Bye bye, you
Yeah.
guys.